He walked along the observation deck of the space station, his boots making a soft echo against the metallic floor. Captain Rylan had always been drawn to the quiet moments, the ones when the hum of the station's engines blended with the faint glow of distant stars. The station orbited a blue-white star on the edge of the human expansion zone, a place where humans and aliens worked together, but not always peacefully. Rylan had seen disputes over resources, over privileges, and over nothing at all. Still, tonight he felt a rare calm. He leaned against the railing, looking down at the bustling corridors below. Most workers were finishing their tasks, moving quickly as though the night itself demanded efficiency. He noticed an alien moving slowly, almost painfully, among the shadows. The creature was humanoid, but its skin shimmered faintly in a silver tone and its eyes were unusually large and dark. It carried cleaning equipment, dragging a mop and a bucket with careful movements. There was something in the way it moved that caught Rylan's attention, a subtle stiffness as if each step hurt. Curiosity pushed him to watch. The alien cleaner, Slyren, rounded a corner and disappeared into a narrow passageway. Rylan frowned. Something wasn't right. He adjusted his coat and followed at a distance. The corridor was dimly lit, filled with the soft hum of the station's life support systems. Rylan's footsteps were silent, but he noticed every flicker of light, every shadow, as if the station itself was holding its breath. When Slyren entered the cleaning bay, Rylan stopped and then his eyes widened. Across the alien's back were deep wounds, raw and angry against the silver skin. They were long, as if something had scraped or struck him repeatedly. Fresh blood had dried in thin streaks, and the movements that had seemed cautious before now made sense. They were careful to avoid pain. Rylan's heart tightened. No one else seemed to notice. Humans and aliens passed by, focused on their own tasks, unaware or unconcerned about the injured worker. Rylan felt a surge of something familiar but rare, a need to act. The station had rules, strict ones, about alien workers. Intervention could create problems for him and even worse for Slyren. But he couldn't ignore what he had seen. He stepped forward slowly, hiding behind a support beam and watching the alien bend over the mop. The wounds were worse than they first appeared. He approached quietly, voice low and steady. "Hey, are you okay?" The alien jerked at the sound, spinning around. Its eyes widened, and for a moment Rylan thought it would flee. But Slyren only stared, uncertain, confused, and wary. I'm fine," the alien said in broken galactic basic, the universal language of trade and cooperation. Its voice was soft, almost hesitant. Rylan crouched slightly, keeping his hands visible. "I saw your back. These injuries. You don't have to hide them from me. I want to help." The alien's eyes narrowed, doubt written across its face. Trust wasn't something easily given, especially to humans. The last time Slyren had tried to ask for help, he had been met with scolding or laughter. But something in Rylan's calm, patient stance made him pause. "I don't need help," Slyren whispered, almost apologetically, returning to his mop. Rylan shook his head. "You do, those wounds are bad. You can't clean the station like this." He stepped closer, careful not to startle him. "I have supplies. I can help you tonight in secret if you trust me." For a moment, the alien said nothing. Then, with a small reluctant gesture, he allowed Rylan to follow him out of the cleaning bay. They moved quietly through the narrow service corridors, the station's hum filling the silence between them. Rylan noticed small details. The careful way Slyren kept his body balanced, the wince in his movements, the way he avoided pressing against certain panels. Every motion told a story of pain and endurance. They reached a narrow ventilation shaft at the end of the corridor. Slyren stopped, pressing a hand to the wall. "I hide here. No one must see me," he said. His voice was almost a whisper. Rylan nodded. "I understand. I won't tell anyone. I just want to help you." He pulled out a small medical kit from his satchel, stocked for emergencies during his shifts. There were antiseptics, bandages, and some pain relievers approved for alien use. He knelt, holding it out. Slyren hesitated, then allowed Rylan to examine his back. The wounds were worse than he expected, several deep gashes that had begun to scab but were still raw. Rylan cleaned each carefully, speaking softly as he worked. "This is going to sting a little, but it will help you heal faster," he said. The alien flinched but didn't pull away. Hours passed in silence. Rylan tended to the wounds, making a small hidden corner in the maintenance area where Slyren could sit safely. He offered water, and the alien slowly accepted it, drinking with hands that trembled slightly. The act itself, simple as it was, built a fragile bridge of trust between them. As he worked, Ryland thought about the system of the station. Aliens like Slyren were often overlooked, their pain ignored or hidden. They cleaned, they repaired, they served, yet they rarely received the care or respect they deserved. Ryland felt a strong resolve growing in him, not just to help Slyren tonight, but to remind everyone that humans could be more than observers. Humans could be protectors, allies, and friends. Slyren finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "Why, do you care?" Ryland smiled faintly. "Because it's the right thing to do, because no one should suffer in silence, and because humans, we don't leave someone behind if we can help." The alien blinked slowly, absorbing the words. There was no immediate response, only a faint, tentative relaxation in his posture. Ryland continued cleaning the wounds, covering them carefully with sterile bandages. By the time the station's night cycle was halfway through, the worst of the bleeding was controlled and the pain seemed reduced. Ryland leaned back, looking at the alien quietly. "Rest. I'll stay with you tonight. No one will know." Slyren's large, dark eyes flickered with a mixture of surprise and disbelief. No one had ever offered such care before. No one had ever risked themselves for him. The concept of trust, of protection, was new and confusing. Yet in that quiet, makeshift sanctuary, something shifted. The station's usual noises, the hum of engines, the occasional clanging of distant machinery, felt distant to both of them. For the first time in months, maybe years, Slyren felt safe. And for Ryland, staying there was no longer about duty. It was about making a difference, however small, in a world that often ignored pain. Outside, the station moved on as usual, oblivious to the quiet act of courage in the maintenance bay. Ryland knew that by morning the world might not notice what he had done. Perhaps others would continue to ignore the suffering of alien workers. But he also knew that small acts could ripple outward. One night of care, one moment of empathy, could change more than just one life. He stayed with Slyren through the night, keeping watch, offering comfort, and tending to the bandages whenever the alien winced. And as the first faint light of the station's artificial dawn spread across the metallic walls, Slyren finally spoke again, his voice steadier than before. "Thank you," he said. Ryland nodded quietly. "You're welcome. You deserve it." And for the first time, the alien cleaner allowed himself a small, hesitant smile. A bridge had been built, and though it was fragile, it was real. As the morning shift began and the corridors filled with workers, Ryland helped Slyren move back toward his duties, careful to shield him from the eyes of those who might judge or question. The whispers began almost immediately. Station workers noticed the difference in Slyren, the calm in his eyes, the steady way he moved. Some were shocked, some curious, but all wondered how the human had made such a difference overnight. Ryland returned to the observation deck after ensuring Slyren was safe. He leaned on the railing, looking down at the bustling station, thinking of the ripple his actions might create. Perhaps humans would be remembered not just for their strength or intelligence, but for their courage, empathy, and willingness to stand up for the weak. The night had been long, the actions risky, and the results uncertain. Yet in that quiet corner of the station, the seeds of change had been planted, and for Ryland that was enough. The station hummed quietly under the artificial night sky. Captain Ryland had barely returned to his quarters when he realized he could not sleep. Something inside him insisted that Slyren needed more than just bandages and water. The alien cleaner had hidden his pain for far too long, and Ryland knew that if he left him alone tonight, the wounds, both visible and invisible, would remain. He quietly gathered the remaining medical supplies from his kit and slipped out into the empty corridors. The hum of the life support systems and the faint echo of distant machinery were the only sounds accompanying him. He moved carefully, mindful of patrol drones and the few night shift workers. Every step reminded him of the risk he was taking. Station rules were strict, and helping an alien in secret could cost him his position, or worse. Yet, Ryland did not hesitate. He found Slyren where he had left him, resting against a wall in the hidden maintenance room. The alien's breathing was shallow, and he stirred slightly as Ryland entered. His large, dark eyes opened, reflecting a mixture of surprise and uncertainty. "I thought you might leave," Slyren said softly. "I could never leave you like this." Rylan replied. He set the kit down and knelt beside him. Tonight I want to make sure you heal properly. It's safer, and you deserve more than just bandages. You deserve care. Slyrin hesitated, but did not move away. The trust between them, fragile as it was, held. Rylan gently helped the alien adjust his position so that the wounds were easier to reach. He cleaned each carefully, using antiseptic and new bandages, whispering reassurance all the while. The alien flinched occasionally, but he no longer recoiled in fear. "You humans usually don't care," Slyrin said after a long pause. His voice was quiet, almost weary. Rylan shook his head. "Some humans might not, but that doesn't define us all. Courage and care are part of what makes us human. Helping someone who suffers, that is strength, not weakness." Slyrin's eyes blinked slowly, trying to understand. There was no mockery, no pity, only sincerity. Slowly, he allowed Rylan to continue his work. The alien had always been strong, enduring hardship in silence, but the human's presence gave him something he had never experienced, relief without judgment. Time passed as Rylan worked. The quiet of the station wrapped around them, a cocoon that isolated them from the world outside. For the first time, Slyrin felt safe enough to speak freely. He recounted the minor accidents, the careless collisions with other station workers, and the silent scorn he endured. Each story made Rylan's resolve stronger. Humanity's role, he realized, was not only to explore and survive, but also to show compassion in places where it was scarce. By the middle of the night, Rylan had finished applying all the necessary treatment. Slyrin's wounds were clean, bandaged securely, and the worst of the pain had been eased. But Rylan knew that healing would not stop at the physical. There were scars of fear and isolation that would take longer to mend. He pulled out a blanket from his bag and wrapped it around the alien's shoulders. "You can rest now," he said gently. "I'll stay here until you fall asleep. No one will disturb you." Slyrin allowed himself a small nod. His usual wary demeanor softened. The alien closed his eyes, finally releasing the tension he had carried for so long. Rylan sat nearby, keeping watch, alert for any disturbance but also allowing the stillness to fill the room. Hours slipped by. The station outside continued its work, unaware of the quiet scene in the maintenance bay. When Slyrin stirred again, it was to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why, do you risk yourself for me? No one else would." Rylan smiled faintly, leaning back against the wall. "Because courage is not just about fighting or winning. It is about standing up for someone who cannot stand alone. It is about protecting life, even when it is inconvenient. That is what humans do. That is what I choose to do." Slyrin's eyes reflected a mixture of awe and disbelief. The words, simple as they were, carried weight. They carried hope, something Slyrin had not felt in a long time. For the first time, he understood that strength could be gentle, that bravery could be expressed through care, not just conflict. The alien shifted slightly, testing the bandages. "I feel different," he admitted softly. "I did not know humans could be like this." "You'll see more," Rylan replied. "You'll see that strength is not always about power. Sometimes it is about empathy, about action when others will not act." Morning light began to filter through the station's windows. The artificial dawn brought a subtle glow to the metallic walls. Rylan helped Slyrin to his feet and guided him toward the main corridor. Other workers were beginning their shifts, and whispers quickly began to circulate. Slyrin walked with a new confidence, his injuries bandaged, his posture steadier. Humans and aliens alike noticed the difference. Some were shocked that a human had spent the night aiding an alien worker, and others were curious about what had happened in secret. Slyrin stopped briefly in the corridor, glancing back at Rylan. His expression was a mix of gratitude and surprise. "You stayed with me all night?" Rylan nodded quietly. "Yes, and I would do it again if you needed me. No one should be left alone in their pain." A murmur ran through the station. Some aliens whispered to each other, sharing the story of the human who had cared for a worker in secret. Others shook their heads in disbelief. Rylan, however, paid them no mind. He had not acted for recognition or praise. He had acted because it was right, and the ripple effect would matter more than any immediate acknowledgement. Over the next few days, the impact of Rylan's actions began to show. Slyren moved more confidently through the station. Other workers, seeing the change in him, treated him with more respect. The station's environment shifted subtly, as if the simple act of care had inspired others to rethink their behavior. Rylan continued his duties, observing quietly, noticing the small improvements, and feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. One evening, as he walked along the observation deck, Rylan reflected on the events of the past night. Humanity, he realized, had a power beyond technology and exploration. The ability to act with compassion, to show courage in small, unseen ways could change the course of relationships of communities and perhaps even entire societies. Slyren approached him quietly, his movements careful but steady. "Captain, I want to thank you, not just for the wounds, but for believing in me." Rylan smiled, placing a hand on the alien's shoulder. "You didn't need my belief. You had it all along. I just helped you see it for yourself." The alien nodded, a small smile on his face, and the two of them stood in silence, watching the stars outside the station's windows. Beyond the metal walls, the universe stretched endlessly, filled with challenges and wonders alike. But here, in this small corner, humanity's courage had made a difference, proving that even in the cold expanse of space, empathy could light the darkest corners. From that night forward, Slyren was no longer just a cleaner, no longer just a silent worker enduring pain in isolation. He became a symbol for others, proof that humans could inspire, protect, and uplift even in situations that seemed hopeless. And Captain Rylan, quietly returning to his duties, knew that the true impact of his actions would unfold in ways he could not yet see. The station moved on, life continuing as usual, but something subtle had changed. Whispers of the human who stayed with the alien through the night spread slowly, carrying a message of courage, empathy, and strength. And somewhere in the quiet corners of the station, Slyren felt for the first time that he was not alone. Rylan continued to walk the corridors, always alert, always ready to help where he could. The night had shown him that courage was not measured by battles fought or enemies defeated, but by moments like this, quiet, deliberate, and compassionate. And as he looked out at the stars, he felt certain that humanity's true power lay not in conquest, but in the ability to stand for others, even when no one else would. By the time the station's artificial day fully began, Rylan had returned to his post, blending into the rhythm of normalcy. Slyren, now healed and calmer, moved through the corridors with a sense of dignity and safety that he had never known. Other workers began to notice, learning that strength could be gentle, and that trust, once earned, could change even the most indifferent hearts. And so, in the vast emptiness of space amidst the metal walls and humming engines, the simple act of care and courage had created a ripple that could not be unseen. Humanity had shown itself not just as explorers or warriors, but as beings capable of empathy and bravery, lighting the way in the lives of those who had long been ignored.